how much can we expect from this 12th senior official meeting that is ongoing right now between China and some of the ASEAN member foreign ministries?
I think this conference itself is focusing on the DOC. It's already verified the importance of this meeting because we know the DOC is quite important for the South China Sea dispute. And this meeting re-emphasized and recognized the importance and the commitment made by 12 years ago. So I think this means a lot. It means that China and the ASEAN countries still will follow the correct track of the DOC and try to work together to solve this issue.
DOC, of course, is the abbreviation form for Code of Conduct. But how much would this specific set of Code of Conduct be helpful in resolving now the territorial disputes in the South China Sea?
Let's go back to the text of the DOC. There's a two issues we should mention. One is means that all the parties recognize there are only the peaceful solution for the dispute. And secondly, the peaceful solution means bilateral contact and bilateral negotiation. So re-emphasize and recognize the importance and the commitment of the DOC means they will go back to the right track. At least this the commitment recently made by the ASEAN and China again.
But others would argue, General Zhu, that yes, the DOC was in fact being negotiated among countries, for example, between China and ASEAN members, but still we see territorial disputes continue and being heightened over the past few years. So they would argue whether DOC is a really meaningful way of resolving the differences. Should we look for other ways, for example, going to the international arbitration, some would argue?
No, I think DOC is very important for China and all those countries which have claims over the sovereignty of the territory in South China Sea. Because if you, as Mr. Professor Yi mentioned just now, some countries are actually against their DOC, for example, the Philippines. So this issue should be addressed by negotiation in the framework of bilateral talks. So while Philippines go to the international court for the arbitration unilaterally, so this action itself is an act which betrays the DOC, which has been consensus reached between China and 10 members of ASEAN.
That also seems to be the statement coming from the Chinese Foreign Ministry on Wednesday. In fact, on Wednesday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry issued a statement on settling the South China Sea disputes between China and the Philippines. Take a look at this. The statement says China has always stood for settling territorial and maritime delimitation disputes through negotiation with states directly concerned and always on the basis of respecting historical facts and in accordance with international law. There is the quote over there on our screen. But the question is, Professor Ye, that is China's opinion. The Philippines does not believe so. So you have some very interesting issue here. So China wants to go into direct negotiation, one with the other. But the Philippines are saying, well, this might not work. So we want to go to so-called international court to settle this. So you have the two sides of the disputes do not necessarily agree at all about the means to settle the disputes. So there's no way, it seems, that we are going to see the end of this dispute because no one is agreeing with one another about how to resolve.
But firstly, we should notice that it's not an international court. It's an arbitral tribunal. It's not a court. It's only the tribunal. So this means it's even not a court. It's only a discussion forum for Philippines to raise this issue. There's no any jurisdiction over this.
Yes, that's said. But still, you got two different ways.
It's not only the Chinese stance, it's also the Philippine stance. In 2011, both countries, they have a statement issued by the two presidents and claim that the two countries, I mean China and the Philippines, not the China and the ASEAN, will go to the bilateral contact to solve the problem. So it's not a Chinese stance only for the bilateral contacts. It's also the Philippines' commitment. So we should say it's the Philippines themselves, they betrayed their commitment and try to find another way. And this way, we can say from the 2011 till now, it's only 5 years. But start the negotiation of the DOC to all the parties signed the DOC take the 11 years. So how we can say Philippine side is we already try our best, and now this way is no way out. So we should go another way.
But
Actually, we had a very successful experience in the settlement of the disputes in Bay of Talking between China and Vietnam. So this example could be taken and be used in the settlement of the disputes over Spratly Islands.
All right, but for now, the Philippines are already going to the international arbitration. Whether you argue it is a temporary mechanism or not, it is. But still, they regard it as the way out. So, if the international arbitration is coming out with its so-called decisions, what will be the two sides of this dispute, China and the Philippines, are going to do as a result of this? China can just discard it and say, well, we are not participating, we are not listening to whatever your decisions are because we don't think it's legitimate.
I think this China is not only disregard such kind of the solution, China will take the action to against such kind of the solution.
What is the action? Here I want to ask the General Zhu, because one of the things people talk a lot about this tension in the South China Sea is everyone is concerned about any possibility of military conflict. We're not talking about wars here. We're just talking about conflict. Conflict could be small scale, could be with a clash of 1 second and yet evolved into something much bigger than everybody could expect. So, General Zhu, what is the bottom line for China? You're coming from the military side, even though you're a retired general, but still, from the Chinese military side, what is the bottom line?
I think here I'm quite confident that no country would like to fight against each other in South China Sea unless China is willing to fight, because the other countries are much smaller and much weaker than China in the military capabilities. Of course, I don't think we Chinese would have to would want to see a conflict between China and other countries on the territory in South China Sea or especially in Spratly Islands. It is because it's not in the interests of any country in this region. But if other countries like the Philippines continue to provoke against China, I'm really wondering this sort of provocations will trigger a conflict between China and the Philippines.
It is not just China and the Philippines. We've also seen some, what some consider as quite dangerous cases over the past few weeks. For example, even between China and the United States. The United States is doing so-called patrolling in the territories that China claims or near the territories that China claims. And there was earlier complaints coming from the US side or coming from the Chinese side talking about there has been some very close encounter of the patrolling ship of the US and also their Chinese counterpart. So, even though we understand China has the legal means of claiming the territory and also send out its own version of the patrolling ships to make sure it is its own territory, but still, such a close encounter could mean a possibility of a crisis, even though it could be small scale. So, General Zhu, once again, are the two sides, or sides, various sides, sophisticated enough to be able to make sure that they are doing exactly, concisely, and precisely what they should do?
Actually, I'm pretty much concerned about those sort of actions taken by the US military. Following the collision in the area over Hainan in 2001, I think the two militaries have negotiated a lot and established some mechanisms to prevent the occurrence of this sort of incident and in managing the crisis between the two sides. And two sides set a lot of rules. For example, the two military aircraft, if they encounter in the air, I mean the public area instead of territorial area, so they will have to keep a distance, which is closely stipulated, that is about 500 meters away.
Right.
And if the two military vessels are encounter on the sea, I mean the high sea, special, maybe in EEZ,
Right.
and they have to keep a distance, which could be enough to avoid this sort of incident. But nowadays, I think this doesn't include the territorial water. If the American vessels intrude into the territorial water, I think the Chinese military can take any action. So I'm pretty much concerned about the occurrence of the new crisis if the Americans continue to provoke against China in this way.
But are we going to see big possibilities of what General Zhu just mentioned, whether from Chinese perspective is coming from the United States or coming from the Philippines, and what would that mean for China's next step of decisions?
I think for China should clearly realize to maintain the peace is not only the unilateral obligation of China. It's need two sides make the common effect. But in the matter of fact, we never heard the United States military mechanisms clear that in any stance, any condition, America will avoid the military contact with China. So it's really difficult for China to say, okay, this is our obligation, it's our job to prevent any military conflict to maintain the peace. I don't think this is our obligation. It's only our expectation. But you could have the very high expectation, but you have to make the very worst preparation for any potential conflict.
Is China prepared for the worst?
Yes, of
General
course.
Zhu?
Yes, especially the military. They have to be prepared for the worst. Otherwise, it's impossible for us to keep peace and stability.
On the other hand, as just you said, Professor Ye, this issue about territorial disputes in the South China Sea has become such a big one over the past few months, if not years. Not only here in China, but also in some of the other countries who claim to have a conflict with China when it comes to sovereignty. So this has become such a big chunk of the internal political debates inside many countries. How dangerous is that?
I think
Especially at a time when you see the United States is going through its own season of political change, its presidential campaign going on, when you see China, of course, and also some of the ASEAN member countries in this way, specifically the Philippines, they're also having change of political leadership. So what would this very intense debate internationally or regionally about territorial disputes mean for domestic politics, and as a result, the other way around? Professor
clearly,
Ye.
actually, in the United States, the South China Sea dispute is not a hot topic on the presidential election. It's only one of the issues. For China, it's a second level issue. Actually, we have the fully confident that we are capable and we have enough patience to solve this problem and suitable for our interest, also to maintain the regional peaceability. And we should notice that even for Philippines, they openly argued for many times, but still they have some internal debate. So that means it's only try to drive the South China Sea dispute from the dispute into the conflicts. It's not welcomed by any country in this region. So it's the internal debate also verified actually the importance of the regional cooperation, and also verified the Chinese stance. I mean, for the seeking for the peaceful long-term resolve is our common interest.
And General Zhu, let me just be frank here. It is no secret in any country that we have debates between the military and the civilian side about the actions to be taken regarding certain hotspot issues. And of course in China as well. So what would that mean, this continued debate regionally between China, for example, and the Philippines, mean for China's internal debate between the military and some of the other policymakers from the other different walks of life when it comes to what should be China's bottom line and what actions to be taken, what are some of the crisis management plan? General Zhu, I would like to ask for your advice.
I think the bottom line of the Chinese side is to protect the sovereignty and territorial integrity. This is very important. Of course, we have very controversial views on how to protect the sovereignty and the territorial integrity. For example, some people would advocate to address the issue through negotiation and through diplomatic channel, while many people are criticizing the Chinese government and the military for their weakness, for their unwillingness. They believe they are unwilling to war against their countries.
Chat rooms.
Yeah, they are. The Philippines is so weak. Why don't you fight against it and recapture those islands occupied by the Philippine side? So I think the internal and the external factors may interact upon each other. Sometimes the nationalism is rising all over those countries around China.
Here is the thing then,
Yeah.
as a result, how to manage and put under control these kinds of different kind of rhetorics, not only here in China, but also elsewhere as well. That is something that really worth thinking, isn't it? I mean, over the past few days, we've seen a successful round of the China-US strategic and economic dialogue. And both sides believe some of the hotspot issues should be managed with certain kind of degree so that it will not being spelled out of control or beyond its proportion of significance. So, Professor Ye, what do you make of this? Is this the right time to do it? Can we have the wisdom, all countries involved, be able to do it?
I think it's not only related to the wisdom or not. It's also about the moment, the right time. Frankly speaking, now it's not because of we are so stupid that we can't find a way out. It's because of all the parties think we can hold on this issue to waiting for the better moment. Better moment means when the environment, the circumstances are better for us, we can make this situation, the resolution is on our side. So that's the key issue.
Our side, meaning Chinese side, or
no.
different sides
Even
regarding
China,
as the best time?
So we can notice that only the Philippines, they are so eager to solve the problem because they know they don't have the better moment. But China and the US, they also say they all have the very confidence that even the time passing by, we still can hold the issue, make the issue to follow our interests. So we can share this. So that means now it's only the manage. Manage doesn't mean you prepare the condition for the future resolvement. It's not only for this. It also means we are prepared for the future conflicts. Manage is only the neutral word. It doesn't mean manage the first step of the resolve.
All right. What about messages coming from you, General Zhu? What do you think? How can all sides be able to exercise what they consider as wisdom and also make sure that things could happen at least to protect their own national interest and also for the best of the region as they see it?
Yeah, I think the best way is to sit down and sit on the negotiation table and negotiate and talk with each other and make each position clearly to the other side. And I believe through these sort of exchanges, we can find ways to address this sort of issue. But I think there is one important thing for all sides. One is that they have to restrain themselves from provoking against the other side. Second, the countries concerned, when they start negotiation, they should try to make compromises to each other. So this is the best way.
All right.